So welcome back to the fourth part of this course on starting to learn the drums the right way. Now this is a big one, reading music. Now please don't switch off. Reading music and reading drum music. Now this is so important, and if you can stick with me and just listen to how important I think it is, then your drumming again will take another step up in level and ability. So reading music, what's it all about? Well, for me, it means that I can communicate rhythms to people and obviously decipher rhythms, get rhythms into my brain that I wouldn't otherwise be able to learn that quickly. So yeah, someone could beatbox me a rhythm, and I could probably play it, but it would soon go out of my head. So reading is so important. It's learning the musical language, which as a drummer you should be involved with as well. Despite all the drummer jokes out there, you are still a musician, and what you play on the drums is just as important as anyone playing a melody instrument or a rhythm instrument. So reading music in basic terms is about two things. The first one is being able to know a little bit of theory of note lengths. So that's how quick and slow notes are, a few rests maybe. And the second part is where the drums sit on the stave. So the stave is the 5 lines that you all know music is written on. So let's take the theory side of it first. So the one, again, that usually people go oh, and yawn and think, well, I'm not doing that. And they're usually the people that are quite happy to just be able to play a few beats. And that's as far as they get in terms of their drumming. But anybody that's a little bit proactive and sits down and learns these basic little bits of theory, where the drums go, and it's super easy. I'm going to tell you now. We have different note lengths. We have crotchets, which are the same speed as the clicks that we've been using. So if we put this click on at 80 again, and we play notes the same as that click, they are called crotchets or quarter notes. So we've got 4 of those beats in a bar. So you've got 4 quarters really that make up that bar. So that's why I use both, either crotchets or quarter notes. So that's one speed of notes, if you like, okay? The next one, so that's a beat long. Those notes are a beat long. Underneath that beat divides into 2, and they are called quavers or 8th notes. So they are twice as quick as what we've just played. They're twice as quick as this click. So if you put your right hand on the click, 1, and the left hand in the middle of the clicks, then you'll get quavers. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we've done crotchets and quavers. Now we've got one more, and that is semi-quavers. So if you think about what a semicircle is, it's half a circle. We have a semicircle in football or soccer, okay, half a circle. So it means half of a quaver. So where we had the crotchet, which splits into 2 quavers, and then those quavers split into 2 again. So that's all we're going to do. 3 types of notes, 3 note lengths. Semi-quavers are 4 notes per beat. They can also be called 16th notes. I did a video on 16th note rhythms. 4 hi-hats per beat. So semi-quavers or 16th notes are going to sound like this. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 eander, 2 eander, 3 eander, 4 eander. So don't worry too much about the counting there. I was just showing you that there were 4 of those notes per beat. So we've got crotchets at this speed, quavers, semiquavers. So if we think about what we play as drummers, the bass and snare in a really simple beat are playing crotchets. The hi-hat plays quavers. So 2 quavers to the bass and 2 quavers to the snare. And when we get to our fill-ins, they are quite often based on semiquavers. I did that as a joke fill earlier, but I just want you to see how that works. We could play. Okay, now you can watch this video as often as you want. You can keep rewinding it and keep reminding yourself of those note lengths. Quarter notes or crotchets, 1/8 notes or quavers, 1/16 notes or semiquavers. So that is the theory side of it. Now, why do we need to know that? Because we're going to put those notes together to make different rhythms. So let's take a simple snare rhythm like this. So we've got 2 crotchets, so that's beat 1 and 2. 2 quavers on beat 3, so 3 and then a crotchet on 4. So we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. All right, so we get that nice, basic but nice rhythm. We could put that into a drum beat, couldn't we? All right, we could pick another little snare drum rhythm. Let's go. Okay, so these are just off the top of my head. We're playing it on the snare, but we could play that as a fill-in. So these are very basic sort of march style sounding rhythms. But if you can learn these and obviously start simply and learn those rhythms, then you'll soon be playing more and more complicated rhythms. So if I wanted to, let you have a rhythm that you could go and learn, I could do it by playing you a few bars of it, like. Okay, but I bet you've forgotten it already. I've almost forgotten it. But if I could write it down for you and you go off and you spend some time looking at it and learning it, then that'd be really useful for you. Now, don't go the other way and only be able to play if you have music in front of you. Again, I have pupils that are brilliant readers, that really fast. I'll scribble something down, they can read it straight through, but they won't be able to remember it. So at some point, you've got to commit those rhythms to your internal library, I call it. So you're like picking these fills and rhythms off this shelf that you hold in your brain. You've got to sort of have a way of remembering them. And another good way I find of remembering those rhythms or fills is kind of seeing how they're written down in my head. So if I do want to kind of learn those rhythms, I kind of take a photograph of it in my head. I can just think, oh, that bass drum was on the and a 3 or the last semiquaver of beat 4, and that will just help me with that groove. So that's the theory side of reading. Now we need to learn where all these instruments are on a stave. So our instrument is the drum kit, not just a snare drum. That's why you want to play it, because you've seen the excitement people have when they play, you've seen the amazing sound it makes, you've watched people in bands, and you thought, right, I really want to have a go at that. Where instruments sit on the stave very briefly, is all to do with their pitch. So you have these 5 lines, okay? At the top of the 5 lines are all the high sounds. At the bottom of the 5 lines, you get the lower sounds, and increasingly, so you get high to low all the way down. So where do you think the bass drum might sit? The bass drum is a low sound. It is also sitting on the floor. This is obviously an electronic kit, but an acoustic bass drum, this is still sitting on the floor. So it's easy to remember that that is in the bottom space of the stave. The hi-hat is a very high-pitched sound, just like these cymbals. Okay, that's why they're written up at the top of the stave. So if we think of the hi-hat, snare and bass only, the hi-hat is at the top, the bass is at the bottom, and then we've got the snare left. Now the snare sits in the second space from the top. It's where a C is written in treble clef if you already play an instrument, but if you don't, it's unimportant. That's where it always sits. The bass drum sits on the bottom line, the hi-hat sits as a cross up on the top, and the snare in the middle. And that's exactly height-wise, if you think this way, the hi-hat is the highest instrument, the snare is a bit lower, and then the bass drum is down on the floor. So that's 2 ways of remembering it. The pitch, from the pitch, low, medium, high, and the actual physical heights of these drums. So you've seen from some of my other videos that I like to add notation in when I'm going through rhythms or fills. And that's just to help you remember those rhythms when the video's stopped and you sit down at your kit, so that you can either print out the PDF or have the screen next to you showing you the notation. So it's the same on there. So we've done simple rock beats and things like that. So when you're starting to read basic rhythms, the basic rock beat, and then you start to play a few more bass drums with that basic rock beat, quite easy to follow those. Under each hi-hat is a bass drum or a snare drum, or nothing. So like that hi-hat's on its own. But where it's really worth starting to understand the rhythm is where you start to get bass drums and snares in the middle of the hi-hats and understand those little internal rhythms there using quavers and semiquavers. So we get a little semiquaver there. So as we learned earlier, the semiquavers are faster, aren't they? So if you just start to think about that, we don't want to stop our hi-hat going steadily. So we're just slipping these notes into the middle, same with the bass drum. So out of these 3 instruments, hi-hat, snare and bass, if there was nothing else, there's still thousands of rhythms that you can play with just these instruments, endless rhythms. And I still think about how amazing that is. You know, when we break out of just playing this on the hi-hat, and little rhythms like that. So reading will really help you learn these rhythms that are super similar. Basically, you've got to find a way of committing those to memory. Little tiny differences in the bass drum will, lock in with a bass player. Reading any fill-ins, let's just show you where the toms are written. The high tom, as its name would suggest, and its sound, sits in the top space of the stave. I'll skip to the floor tom, because the floor tom sits above the bass drum, so in the second space from the bottom. And the odd one out is the middle tom that sits with the second line going through the note. Okay, so it's the only drum that has the line, unless you're playing with 2 bass drums or anything more complicated like that. That one, the middle tom, has the second line down going through the note. So you get high tom, medium tom, low tom. So if you read from the bottom, you have the bass, then the low tom, then the snare, then the middle tom, then the high tom. So not quite as intuitive as you might think, but they've got to put these notes somewhere. So a lot of people ask me, people that don't know about drums, can you write drum music down? And of course, as we've learned, you absolutely can. And hopefully you can see from this video how useful that is going to be in learning these rhythms and being able to communicate with others. Another great way of learning how to read music is by writing music. I still remember sitting down trying to fathom out all these little rhythms. So why don't you do that? You get a blank piece of paper, just draw 5 straight lines on it and just write some little beats down or little rhythms, or try and intermingle these notes, crotchets, quavers, semiquavers. Why don't you try and write a little simple fill? Okay? If you try and do that, even though that might seem too simple, you'll soon be writing much more complicated rhythms. So I hope this video showed you how important reading music is. I hope now you're thinking, right, that is another thing that I've really got to knuckle down and learn. You know, even if you're just playing basic reading, just start there. Don't think too complicated. Just start simply, learn the names of those notes, learn where these drums sit. You know, it's not very difficult. So that's the end of this introductory free course from Get On The Drums. I really hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget that you have these videos now. You can go back and watch them again, and I'd really recommend that you do that. There's quite a lot of information there from my experience of being a drummer, and I'm trying to give you a real heads up and a quick start way of, you know, increasing the level of your drumming very, very quickly. So please look out for much more great content from Get On The Drums. There'll be plenty more free videos, free subscriber only material, lots of things to look forward to in the coming months and years. So the main thing you can remember, of course you know already, is to get on the drums.